time evolves and comes to a place where it renews again. There is first a purification time, then there's renewal time. We are getting very close to this time now. We were told that we would see America come and go. And in a sense, America is dying from within because they forgot the instructions on how to live on earth. Everything is coming to a time where prophecy and man's inability to live on earth in a spiritual way will come to a crossroad of great problems. It's the Hopi belief, it's our belief that if you're not spiritually connected to the earth and understand the spiritual reality of how to live on earth, it's likely you will not make it.
This is, it's disturbing information. So on the screen is May 18th, 1980. Again, I like to ask the question is, does anyone know what happened May 18th, 1980? It's okay if you don't, I'll remind you, just like December 2004 with the tsunami.
Right.
So the 18th of May, 1980 is when Mount St. Helens.
Oh, right.
The reason why that's important is if we look at this solar system scope software, again, hats off to the men and women, everyone involved in this. It's great software. We see, I drew the software back so that you can see Saturn and Jupiter. See Saturn here, Jupiter. If I come in a little bit on the software, here's Earth, May 18th, 1980, triggered Mount St. Helens. What's important with this formation is the physics, the solar system dynamics of not only our solar system, other solar systems in our galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, and its affiliation and its location among other galaxies. What we're dealing is with fractal patterns. Now, I know, V, you're a connoisseur of watches, aren't you?
Yes.
High-end watches. You have excellent knowledge. I'm kind of jealous of the knowledge, but if I had any questions, I would go to you.
Right.
Because, and I can see your fascination. Watches are investments. They're beautiful works of art. There's just a lot of attraction to watches. Now, the better watches that you get involved in, just like high-end automobiles, it's phenomenal engineering. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, it's incredible. It's a machine with a heart. There's no other way to describe it. It's beautiful what man has done with these little timepieces.
Yes, and I watched some videos, and I like how do they the machines to engineer these gears, and then the balancing and the mechanisms and how they can maybe self-wind, and it's unbelievable. So if you use that illustration and your knowledge that you have with these fine watches, the engineering, the balance, the gears, and precision of these watches, our universe is no different. It's a watch. It's precision in watches, but it's much more complicated than that, in that you have multiple watches engaging with other watches on top of that sophistication of the individual watch. So our solar system is a watch, a very advanced, balanced feat of engineering. But this watch, our solar system, is affected by other watches, and watches that are larger, watches that are smaller. And how does one watch interface with another watch and still maintain their individual precisions? You get to a point where I'm not near smart enough. I mean, I'm smart in some areas, stupid, ignorant in other areas. You can't be a genius in everything. But the more I study this in my work with electromagnetic frequencies and then ion and plasma generation, the more knowledge that I'm getting on our solar system, the galaxy, and how they work, the less significant I feel. But I also have just a hint of the type of wisdom and knowledge and engineering, who or what's responsible for this. And it's very humbling. So what happened in 1980 with the harmonics, the balancing of our solar system, all the planets were in a plane. They were on this side. They were on this side of our solar system, but the Earth had broken the plane of the planet alignments. Earth had swung around here, and it kind of stuck its head out. You know, I think it's a Chinese proverb saying that the head of the nail that's tallest gets hammered.
Yeah.
The ones. So Earth came out of this alignment here in between Venus, Mars, and then when I backed up further, your Jupiter and Saturn. And as soon as it came out of this alignment, Mount St. Helens popped. It was you know, the nail too high, sticking its head up, and it got hammered. We have very similar solar system dynamics. If I fast forward to around May of the year 2028, the exact same thing is happening. So if you look at the alignment of Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars, and I go in, Earth now breaks this alignment. See how Earth passes up Venus?
Yeah.
Earth is starting to stick its head up like the nail that's too high that gets hammered. It's the exact same harmonics. Now, here's the problem. This is different than the fact that Mount St. Helens popped in 1980, because someone could say, all right, Jet, you mentioned that. That's interesting. You had an electromagnetic energy jolt, and it triggered maybe a particular hotspot. Mount St. Helens was already pressurized, and it popped. Kind of like if you open up a cork of a champagne bottle, it pops. So that was a pressure relief valve. That was tragic for the area. Some people lost their lives, but that was just one particular state. That wasn't, if you're in other parts of the United States, Canada, you're okay, Mexico, Europe, South America, or Southern Hemisphere. Here's what the difference is, B. If we back up, this is in the core here, which is kind of the gold color. We have the thicker magma, which is closest to the core, and then there's a thinner magma between this grouping here, and it's what our continental crust kind of float on. Picture like our continents float on a very thick waterbed type membrane. These corridors, these magma plumes that are closest to the core, they don't look like this anymore. They have swollen. These have expanded and swollen to where they're encompassing. They cover the core, and they've also expanded, and they're filling the gap in between this photograph and the underneath of the crust, which the thinner magma it's floating upon. The reason why that's important is, let's see, I think there's right here, you have these magma plumes that come up, and see how they're reaching the surface, or what they'd be doing is they'd be reaching underneath the continental crust. Or if they come and poke through, they're active volcanoes, if they poke through the surface. These magma plumes now, instead of particular arms that we've had in the past, they are everywhere. All this space here would be now yellow, and it's pressurized. So when the Earth goes beyond that plane, that nail sticking its head up, like the solar system harmonics in May of 1980, when everything's pressurized, you're not going to have just one volcano erupting. They all are. All hot spots, such as the New Madrid Fault, which caused the Mississippi River to run backwards for 3 days. That goes. Also, what happens is you start having stresses that are already taking place. Since the Earth is pressurized, you have stresses underneath continental plates. So the continental crust is starting to separate underneath. Let's say 80 miles, 100 miles below, depending on the thickness of the crust, it's already starting to separate from underneath and working its way up. So you're going to have the land masses now separate, and when that happens, it happens within days because it's already being separated from underneath. That's why you have all this earthquake activity. If you look at the software systems that keep track of daily earthquakes, and you look at the depth of these earthquakes, the Earth is ready to have a form of expansion. It's actually going to expand.
Now, based on what you're talking about, and how does this affect plate tectonics? Are we going to see more earthquakes, tsunamis, things of that sort?
Yes. Yeah, and it gets worse because look, the infrastructure is delicate. Dams, power plants, bridges. It doesn't take much geological movement and you have failure, structural failure. Engineering is based on consistency and soundness of its footings and hitting bedrock. But when bedrock liquefies or shifts, all the infrastructure collapses. So if you look at from an economic standpoint, how could the United States, with a major terraforming, the United States can't withstand major cities where high rises are compromised, they either collapse or the foundations are permanently damaged and are leaning, and bridges are gone, and dams and nuclear power plants have been interrupted. And then you have the problem of notice. It takes a while to shut down a functioning nuclear power plant. So when these events happen and they start popping, when you ever go to a chiropractor and they adjust your back or neck and you hear that pop, 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 pop as they're adjusting.
Right.
There's no engineering utility company that can properly shut down these reactors. But if you have the infrastructure of dams and bridges and high rises being compromised, there's no economic engine that can recover.
We are all from the earth. And when the earth, the water, the atmosphere is corrupted, then it will create its own reaction. Mother is reacting. In the Hopi prophecy, they say the storms and floods will become greater. To me, it's not a negative thing to know that there will be great changes. It's not negative. It's evolution. When you look at it as evolution, it's time. Nothing stays the same.